Dr. Jill Stein is on your screen. She is joining us from Houston, where the Green Party is meeting this weekend, and she will be, as she was in 2012, the Green Party's standard bearer for the presidency. Joining us on Newsmakers to ask questions of Dr. Stein, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, and Olivier Knox, Yahoo News' chief Washington correspondent. And Olivier, you're up first.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Stein, for joining us today. I have a question for you about the presidential debates. It now appears that a judge has dismissed the case that you and Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson brought to be part of those debates. How severe a blow is that to your campaign, and what possible remedies do you envision?
Great, thank you. I'm not surprised to hear that. We sort of assumed that would be the outcome. We do have a second case. There are actually two of them, but I'm not holding my breath that we're going to get a favorable decision in a court of law. On the other hand, in the court of public opinion, I think we've already won. I think the public is not happy with the two candidates from the Democratic and Republican parties, who are the most distrusted and disliked throughout history. The public is clamoring for more voices and more choices, and I think the pressure will continue to grow. In addition, we're coming up in the polls. Today's Marist McClatchy poll said that we're at 6%. So we've basically tripled our numbers in the course of a couple of weeks. We hope to do that again and get to the 15%. But in any case, I think the American public not only has a right to vote, they have a right to know who they can vote for. And I encourage people to go to our website, my website at jill2016.com, and join our campaign for open debates. The American people deserve, especially at this time of great discontent with our rigged political system, the American people deserve a full and fair debate.
Doctor, you tried to get Bernie Sanders to join your movement soon or right around the Democratic convention. You're very critical of Hillary Clinton, especially in the wake of the leaked emails from the Democratic National Committee. Did you ever talk to Bernie Sanders? Did he ever seriously consider joining forces with you? And how would that have worked? Would he have been on the ticket?
We were ready to put all options on the table. And of course, it's the delegates to the Green Party convention that decide their candidate. But I was certainly willing, if he saw the light, if he saw the green light after having been really thrown under the bus by the Democratic Party, if he came to understand why we need a different politics that is not controlled by the big banks and the fossil fuel giants and the war profiteers, and the Green Party is the only party that is the only national party that's not poisoned by that corporate money, lobbyist money, super PACs. If Bernie came to understand why he needs a revolutionary party to support a revolutionary campaign, I was willing certainly to go to bat for him to potentially run at the top of the ticket if we could make the case to the delegates. He did not respond, and that was no surprise because the Green Party's been trying to open a conversation with him actually for many years. So he has his own particular political perspective. It's not ours. But, we'll see. We remain open to what happens in a very shifting political climate. It's not like he can, enter into the nominating process for the Green Party now. That's over and done with. But I do see a lot of potential for collaborating down the line. And perhaps more to the point, his movement, is not sitting like happy campers with a campaign that is Hillary Clinton's campaign that really represents the opposite of what they were working for with Bernie Sanders. That is an economy that works for everyone, that's not driven by the big banks and the billionaires. That remains a critical issue for his supporters, who really don't want to see their hard work of the past year just kind of go down the drain with a campaign that is rolling in the dough of the big bankers and the health insurance companies and all the rest. So the movement is very much alive, and that movement is actually alive at our convention, where many of the former spokespeople actually for the Sanders campaign are now continuing that work and bringing that movement into our party to support it, not just to November, but until we prevail.
Dr. Stein, You mentioned Bernie repeatedly now, but he has clearly cast his lot in with Hillary Clinton. He has made the argument that the absolute paramount goal in this election now is to defeat Donald Trump. I've talked to Democrats who support Hillary, Democrats who support Bernie, some independents, and the refrain comes back again and again that a vote for you amounts to a vote for Make America Great Again. How do you respond to that? Is a vote for you a vote for Donald Trump?
Well, what the numbers show is that even Hillary's supporters, for the most part, in majority, don't actually support Hillary. They're just afraid of Donald Trump and don't like Donald Trump. The same is true of Donald Trump's supporters. They don't actually support him. The majority, excuse me, actually just really objects to Hillary Clinton. And at the same time, the majority of voters are actually calling for an independent candidate, a new voice that represents everyday people. So I think before we call the election, we are a few months out, we ought to have a full and fair debate, and we ought to allow voters to, to actually meet their urgent need for a real debate and for more voices and choices. And let me reemphasize what Bernie himself said, which is that the only answer to Donald Trump is a true progressive agenda that addresses the economic misery that gives rise to this right-wing extremism, not just in America, it's not just Donald Trump, it's a whole lot, it's a political surge here in America like it is in Europe. And this is very much a response to the policies of so-called neoliberalism, the policies of austerity, the policies that really are great for bankers and billionaires, but which are terrible for working people. So we need a real answer here. Unfortunately, Hillary Clinton has been part of the problem. It's the policies that Bill signed and Hillary supported that have in particular driven this crisis to great extremes, and that includes NAFTA, which Bill signed and Hillary supported and advocated for and celebrated, which sends our jobs offshore, puts downward pressure on wages, and they have been supporting the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Hillary, as the NAFTA on steroids. Hillary has, waffled a little bit, but even her close political allies say no problem. She'll be back when the election's over, and we've seen the DNC refuse to repudiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership in their voluntary platform even. So the problems that have created the rise of Donald Trump will be continued by Hillary Clinton. And just to mention also Wall Street deregulation that led the way to the crash, disappearance of 9 million jobs, the theft of 5 million homes out from under their homeowners. This is very much what the Clinton agenda has been about. Hillary continues to be sponsored by the big bankers, give those speeches behind closed doors for hundreds of thousands of dollars that still she won't share with the public. So, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. It's very clear Hillary Clinton may be talking the talk, but she's not walking the walk.
Doctor,
and the real solution is to have a unified progressive movement to stand up for the truly progressive policies that my campaign provides.
At one point, as you may remember, Bernie Sanders suggested that Hillary Clinton is not fit to be president. Is Hillary Clinton fit to be commander-in-chief?
According to, the prevailing paradigm, Hillary Clinton is celebrated as a representative of that prevailing paradigm. So, in my opinion, however, this is not what the American people need. She's represented, war. There's been no more of a war hawk advocate as Secretary of State and even as a member of Congress. Hillary led the way into Libya. An incredible disaster that's now been, it carries on. We have a new bombing campaign over Libya now. So Hillary represents more of a failed extreme militarism. She represents the policies of the bankers, and having served on the board of Walmart, really represents a kind of economy that's good for the CEOs, but is very hard on working people and women. So I would say, this traditional paradigm of neoliberalism is not fit the whole paradigm is not fit for the American people.
Dr. Stein, I want you to get an opportunity to address two recent controversies that have involved you. One, what is your position on mandatory vaccines for children?
Well, it's clear vaccines are a critical part of our public health infrastructure and have made a major contribution to public health. The point that I've been making is that all medications need proper regulation, and when you have an FDA that's part of the revolving door from the pharmaceutical industry, and when you have a political environment where $700 million was contributed just between 2009 and 2011 from the pharmaceutical company to our politicians, we need to restore the integrity and the public trust in our regulatory apparatus. That's not rocket science. This is obvious, and one only has to look at what happened, the disaster of FDA's regulation around Vioxx, where there was over 100,000 cases of serious heart disease that developed while the FDA was suppressing the information that they had about its side effects and preventing physicians from understanding what the true story was and preventing the public from knowing. So we need to prevent more Vioxxes from happening. We need an FDA that deserves the public's confidence.
And then the second one, there's a video making the rounds now. It's being reported out in which you appear to say that broadband internet access in schools, Wi-Fi, is somehow having an adverse health effect on children's brains. You describe them as guinea pigs. You say it looks like we are trying to discover which ones of them die. It's fairly remarkable statements. There's no evidence that I know of that Wi-Fi has adverse health effects, apart from maybe encouraging a sedentary lifestyle in front of a computer. What were you trying to say? What is your position today on that?
Maybe you didn't see the study that was just released, put out by the National Institutes of Health, actually. So radical an organization of that, just made known the results of their most detailed and accurate and scientifically rigorous study that raises questions. And throughout Europe, you may know, several countries, many countries, and including the European Regulatory Agency, have seen fit to protect vulnerable people from that sort of radiation. I am not saying that the science is done on this, rather that the science has just begun. I personally support a precautionary principle. Having studied at great detail, and I would recommend to you the book that I wrote on this with Physicians for Social Responsibility called In Harm's Way, Toxic Threats to Child Development, which was published in the early 2000s with Physicians for Social Responsibility. We actually reviewed the history of regulation, and in fact, unfortunately, our regulatory system catches up after the fact. Lead is the classic example. You know, why do we have the disasters now in Flint, Michigan, and other places around the world? Because we have lead everywhere, because the public was a guinea pig for lead. It took decades after it was well understood that high-dose lead exposure was devastating. We did not have regulations in place to limit the dispersal of lead throughout our environment and our consumer products, paint in our homes, in our gasoline. We didn't regulate lead until about a century after it was known that lead was a great hazard. Had we had a more precautionary approach that would protect people rather than profits of the industry, we would be a much healthier place today.
We're at the 10-minute mark.
Okay, Doctor, right now the top tax rate for married people filing jointly is around 40%. It has been 50%. In 1981, it was 70%. What should be the top tax rate if you were president?
You know, I think we need to ask our wealthiest corporations and individuals to pay their fair share. they have been making out like bandits, and the wealth of the nation has shifted into very few hands. In the words of Louis Brandeis, the Supreme Court Justice, we have a choice between a democracy or vast concentrations of wealth. And the contribution of the richest has been systematically diminished over a course of several decades. So yes, I think we need a truly graduated income tax so that the super rich are paying their fair share, which should be in the range of 70% on income taxes.
How would you define the
much healthier economy.
But doctor, how would you define the super rich? Say around 70%, but how much do people make as far as the individual or married?
Yes, and I don't have that number for you offhand, but certainly when people are making in the millions and billions of dollars, they need to be contributing at a much higher level than they are. No, I'm not talking about making $300,000 or $400,000. I'm talking about a very highest level of income where people are making on the order of millions, or billions of dollars per year. They need to actually be kicking in their fair share.
Dr. Stein, you mentioned the new military campaign in Libya. We are, by my count, involved in 7 military campaigns right now in predominantly Muslim countries. In a Stein administration, what would what's been called the war on terrorism look like? Where would you be involved? Where would you not be involved? What criteria would you apply before you commit young American men and women to conflict?
So let's be clear what the record of this war on terror is. According to a recent Harvard study, Iraq and Afghanistan have cost us $6 trillion when you include the ongoing and future health care costs of caring for our wounded veterans. And that $6 trillion comes out to, I'm told, on the order of $75,000 on average per American household, which is just absolutely staggering. I mean, $6 trillion on its own is an incredible amount of money. And what do we have to show for it? You know, failed states, mass refugee migrations, which are tearing apart Europe as well as the Middle East, and worse terrorist threats. Every one of the terrorist threats we've been fighting is actually only bigger and stronger on account of this fight. And that includes the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and then the whole new crisis of ISIS, which came out of the disaster largely in Iraq, but also Libya. So this is a catastrophically failed policy. You cannot bomb terrorists out of existence. On the other hand, there are things that we can do that would just pull the rug out from under them. And let's remember where this terrorist enterprise began. This was part of a strategy between the Saudis and the U.S. in Afghanistan to strengthen the Mujahideen and make them an international terrorist religious cause, very much in conjunction with the Saudi religious interpretation of Wahhabism. And the Saudis then established their schools for terrorists in training, essentially, their madrasas. So this has been an extremely catastrophic policy intended to cause trouble for the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, but it has backfired absolutely massively. But unfortunately, the CIA and our allies, particularly the Saudis, have continued to support this movement, to fund it, to arm it, and to train it. We cannot simultaneously fight terrorism while we or our allies are funding, arming, and training it. So we actually call for a weapons embargo, which we can lead the way on because we are providing the majority of arms to the region, which are either provided to all sides or fall into the hands of all sides. We call for a weapons embargo, and we call for a freeze on the bank accounts of those countries that continue to fund terrorism. Hillary Clinton herself, in a leaked series of State Department memos, when she was Secretary of State, identified the Saudis as still the major source of funding for Sunni jihad terrorism around the world. So we got it started. We can put it to a stop. Those are the first two things we would do. My administration would also work with Turkey. They have been persuaded to close their border to the flow of refugees, they can be persuaded to close their border to the flow of jihadi militias. So those are the critical first steps, and I would say more broadly, we need a foreign policy that's based not on military and economic domination, not on securing oil or other fossil fuel resources or their routes of transportation. We need a foreign policy based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy.
Doctor, you're indirectly or directly criticizing Barack Obama, and I want you to give him a grade. Does he deserve an A as president? Is he a C? Is he an F, in your opinion? Has Obama been a great, good, or bad president?
According to the conventional view, he's been a great president. In my view, looking at our actual consequences, and I would say in particular, the climate crisis is far worse today thanks to all of the above, which, yes, increased renewables, but massively increased fossil fuels. Wrapped pipeline around the world, and we can thank Hillary Clinton for that as well. So I think the climate policy has been a disaster. I think the foreign policy has been a continuation of George Bush, and we continue to have, outrageous drone wars and expanding the wars on terror and the wars for oil, which have been a disaster. I think on nuclear weapons, the policies of the Obama administration, which have continued the policies of his predecessors, both Democratic and Republican, has been a disaster. We have a new nuclear arms race, which puts us at great peril. So, this is who he is. I don't want to criticize the man. This is what his politics is, but I think it's absolutely the wrong politics for the 21st century and this crisis that we are facing, which is a pervasive crisis. We need a very new way forward, which we have an incredible opening for right now because the American people are clamoring for a new way forward that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. Barack Obama has been a representative of the political system that is driven by the fossil fuel giants and the predatory banks and the war profiteers. So this is what we get with that political system. This is why we need system change, not just small change around the margins.
Dr. Stein, we have 3 minutes left with you. Mr. Knox?
Doctor, in politics, nothing succeeds like success. You obviously want to end this cycle above the 5% threshold that would qualify you for federal matching funds. Where's the Green Party going to win in November? Are there congressional battles where you think you have a good shot? Are there states where you think you might come in third or even win? Where are you going to do best?
Let me just say that all bets are off because the word is only beginning to break through. Our campaign has only begun to reach mainstream media. Donald Trump had $2 billion worth of free mainstream media. Hillary Clinton had $1 billion. This is according to a New York Times analysis several months back. So we are only beginning to enter into the conversation at a time that people are actually clamoring for the truly systemic change that we represent. Just to look at young people who are locked in debt, in predatory student loan debt, that's 42 million voters who do not have a future under either Democrats or Republicans, who essentially continue more of the same. As they hear that my campaign will cancel student debt like we canceled the bad debt of the bankers, we basically bailed out the bankers to the tune of trillions of dollars. We can do that for the victims of that waste, fraud, and abuse on Wall Street. As they hear about that, that word begins to spread. I heard just today that we're at 6% in this McClatchy-Marist poll. And how did we get there without media coverage? This is basically word of mouth. Word is getting out, and I'd say hold on to your hats and let's see where this conversation goes. If we can simply double our numbers and a little bit more, we will be in the debates, and then all bets are off about what the American people are going to do. This is really the perfect storm for a voter revolt. We are facing in this election, we're not just looking at what kind of future we're going to have, but whether we are going to have a future at all, to look at expanding war, the nuclear arms race, and the climate crisis, which is coming closer by the day.
Dr.
So
Stein,
I think we're in an entirely unique moment.
In our 30 seconds
Sure.
left, there are realities of the ballot process, and right now your Green Party is in fewer than half the states. What will that really look like in Election Day this year? How many states do you anticipate being on the ballot?
Between 48 and 50. So those early numbers reflected the deadlines of the petition process. So those numbers are going up rapidly, and we also have active ongoing cases in court. So we hope to be on the ballot perhaps for every voter, if not every voter, just about every voter. So, you know, I would say it's not realistic to keep shooting ourselves in the foot here with the two parties that are throwing us under the bus. I think the realistic vote is to stand up and build. However far we get, we are that much further ahead for the down ballot races and for the ongoing fight for an America and a world that works for all of us.
Dr. Jill Stein, Green Party presidential candidate, joining us from Houston, where the Green Party is meeting for their nominating convention over this weekend. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Great talking.
Well, by her admission and by most that you talk to, this is a non-conventional election year. So where does the Green Party fit in? Do we know at this point in the process? For both of you, really?
I don't think we do know exactly where they fit. We're still poring over the libertarian numbers. We're still looking at what's happening with independent voters, where they're peeling off to. I don't think we know. I think she's not wrong to say all bets are off. It's just she's got a really long uphill climb to achieve success as she defined it. You know, doubling their numbers, more than doubling their numbers to get in the debates. Well, good luck.
It's going to be tough. There's no doubt. I totally agree with you. But this is the year that she's getting more attention. I think she showed in that interview. She's pretty media savvy. She has a message. She doesn't hold back in criticizing the conventional candidates, and especially going after Hillary Clinton pretty hard. So, but you know, she needs to get to 15% to get in the debates. The first debate, September 26th. That is highly unlikely. She's in single digits now. And you know, whether she gets in the debates is a big thing. It's a catch-22. You know, if you can't get in the debates, then you get more attention. But without a doubt, I think that, I know she was kind of criticizing the media, but the media has been focused on these third-party candidates more so than ever, partly because Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are, generally speaking, unpopular.
She's polling in double digits with younger voters. So what impact will that have on the election this year?
Well, even if it doesn't have a huge impact on the election this year, obviously people are watching for 2020 and beyond. So I think one of the amazing legacies of the Bernie campaign, in addition to this incredible fundraising apparatus that he built online, I think people are watching. People are watching changing demographics. They're watching how younger voters are voting now. They're watching what messages appeal to them now. So I think all those things are going to be pretty important. I agree with Bob. She's playing a difficult hand pretty capably, I think, in terms of getting attention in a year in which people are rejecting institutions and they're rejecting the establishment, but maybe not in the numbers that she needs to really pull this off.
So, Bob, you asked a number of questions about Bernie Sanders, and he has cast his lot with the Democrats. Can you explain to people watching this when there seemed to be alignment between his positions and a number of the Greens' positions?
Yeah, she was sending him letters and putting out press releases calling on Bernie Sanders to join the movement. And as she said, he didn't answer them. And then there was also talks of Bernie Sanders supporter, Cleveland former lawmaker at the state level, Nina Turner, was potentially going to be her running mate. That also didn't work out. So, you know, Bernie Sanders said repeatedly during the primary that he was going to help the nominee. Remember, Bernie Sanders is an independent. He's not a member of the Democratic Party technically. So that she needs to appeal, though, to the Bernie Sanders supporters. That is clearly her strategy. And even though she didn't get Bernie Sanders, she's saying the things, and you mentioned the youth vote, which went overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. She needs to really get those voters fired up for her candidacy. And, you know, and I think she has a message that if you care about climate change, you're going to listen to what she has to say.
So I'm still curious about Senator Sanders' strategy going forward.
Well, he's going to, so I think he technically was a Democrat, and he's going to become an independent again.
It's confusing.
One of my favorite moments in this whole campaign is when he said, when I guess his manager said, when he gets back to the Senate, he'll be an independent again.
Yes.
Well, look, I mean, he showed the true potential of an online fundraising strategy. It was very, very important. He showed the potential of the progressive message. The question is whether he was vastly different from the other second place Democratic candidates. You know, there's always this dynamic with an establishment candidate, and then there's sort of the head and the heart, right? Whether you want to talk about Al Gore and Bill Bradley, for example, right? The question for me is how different he is. Is he just that person in this cycle? Is he a vessel for these aspirations? Is he truly the candidate? Was it the candidate, the message? What drew these voters in? And I'm not totally clear yet. One thing about him, people completely underestimate Bernie Sanders as a political strategist. He's extremely organized. I know he looks a little bit like a tenured professor, but he's actually extremely organized. He has great online presence. He knows where his audience is in a way that very few other politicians do.
Yeah, what I'm wondering, and we have about 30 seconds left, is whether or not he sees his voters going within and changing the Democratic Party, or whether or not there's a third party option that he sees going forward that might give voice to his kinds of concerns.
It's a tough one. I think one to watch is that if Hillary Clinton does become the next president, what presidents worry about from day one is 4 years from then, and they would, and I think even though he's 74 years old, he's not going to shut the door on possibly running again. So I think that the Hillary Clinton people, if she becomes president, the polls suggest she will right now, a long way to go, that she's got to worry about a primary challenge, whether that's Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or somebody else down the road. But long way to go. But I think Bernie Sanders has to make those decisions. What kind of movement? Where does his movement go from here? He clearly has a huge following, and the fundraising has been astounding.
And it would be tremendous for the Greens if he ends up going in that direction, as we heard from Dr. Stein. Thanks to both of you for your questions this week. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.